I only raised $300,000. I actually made more money doing the job than I did to get the job. I made $120,000 a year for 4 years. That's what the governor is paid. And so I made $480,000, and I only spent $300,000 to get it. The problem is, Alex, I don't have ballot access. I can say all I want. I'll run for president. But I won't have ballot access in any states, so therefore they'd have to write me, and there's no way you stand any chance.
Okay, I got that, but look at Ron Paul. His average donation's about $40, and he's the number 3 raiser. I think you could do it regardless. You're saying, you've told me privately, I won't run unless I think I can win. You win by fighting these creatures and forcing your way into the media, and I agree. I think it's time for the libertarians. Aaron Russo was great. Michael Bagnerick, great. Come on, folks. They're great guys. But Jesse Ventura, you are head and shoulders more as a personality. The libertarians need to call for you. I know they're waiting for Ron Paul off record. I mean, that's well known in the media. Paul said he might run third party if he doesn't get the nomination. But I'm telling you, Gov, I mean, you put your hat in the ring. You're waiting on it. I don't. What can I do? What am I supposed to do? Call the libertarians and say, here I am? Well, that's what happens. They've got people already lobbying, or they've got that caucus. I mean, I think it's here.
I think that it would require the libertarians to come to me and say, look, we have ballot access in 48, 50 states. We would like you to be our nomination for president.
Oh, it's sensational.
Because I just don't think it's right for me to... I think they're the organization. They're the ones that have the ballot access.
Well, I know this. You're very libertarian on every front. In fact,
I passed their test with flying colors.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt compared to Bob Barr. I mean, you're a much bigger and more powerful and constitutional figure. You didn't vote for the Patriot Act like he did, and I'm not... He said he voted for it to get a sunset in it, but, I mean, I'm not saying Barr's even a bad guy. The point is, you are light years ahead of him.
Remember something, too, though, Alex. When you let me explain this. When you hold those public offices, when you leave 10 years later, you realize that there are quite a few things you voted for that you probably, in hindsight, would not have done. That can happen to you. You know, and it can happen, and I'm not making excuses for Bob Barr on the Patriot Act, but it can happen, and it's okay to change your mind. If you voted for something 10 years ago, and then you realize through educating yourself and seeing the results of it that you were wrong, then simply come out and admit it.
All right, well, I'm going to say this right.
I made a mistake when I voted for that 10 years ago.
I agree. I think he's done that now. But what I'm saying here is it shows a judgment issue, but I understand what you're saying. I'm saying this right now. If the Libertarian Party does not approach you now and does not seriously entertain asking you to go to their caucus and try to win it, because that's how it works. It's Libertarian. You undoubtedly win it hands down because you've got the background, everything. You dwarf Bob Barr. You would bring absolute lightning power to this whole thing, and the fundraising they would get, the amount of attention. A lot of people have said at the hierarchy they're infiltrated. And I'm saying right now, if they don't approach you, they are 100% infiltrated. Unless they come out and say, we're waiting for Ron Paul, then they throw the gauntlet down in front of him if he doesn't pick it up and then have you as VP. Because that's even, I mean, that's a royal flush right there. That's power packed. But, I mean, definitely you need to get in the mix now. And people who are libertarians need to call them up and say, listen, we need Jesse Ventura in there. Don't try another Bob Barr on us or something. I mean, I'm sorry, not trying to make Bob Barr angry at us. He comes on the show, but I'm sorry, Bob, you're no Jesse Ventura.
Well, you know, I'm not going to say one or the other that way, you know, on Mr. Barr, but, you know, that's the status of it. And then again, you know, before I would do anything like that, I would have to consult my wife and my family because I don't know if they're up for it. You know, and I'll be honest with you, Alex, before any elected job, I put my wife in front of it. That's one of the reasons I did not seek re-election for a second term as governor. You know, I could have won. There's no doubt in my mind I could have been reelected probably as many times as I would have desired. The Republican Speaker of the House, even off the record, told me that when I was in office. He said, there's nobody in Minnesota that'll beat you. He said, you can be governor as long as you want, but I'm not that way. I'm a throwback. I believe that when you go and serve, and then when you're done serving, go back to what you used to do. That you should not make a career out of it. That's one of the downfalls of our country, is that all of these elected people, they're all career politicians. And when one becomes a career politician, then you're making decisions to benefit your career, which may not be the right decisions to benefit the country. And that's the situation we're in. And, of course, with the Democrats and Republicans, they don't give a damn about the country. All they care about is their party, their power, and whoever they serve, which is, of course, their corporate donors and big money.
Let me go over a few of those numbers, Governor. This is an article, 12 Facts About Money in Congress That Are So Outrageous, It's Hard to Believe They Are True. Up at Infowars.com, we have links in this article to all of the mainline statistics. The collective net worth of the members of Congress increased by 25% between 2008 and 2010, as the rest of the collective wealth went down. Number two, the collective net worth of all members of Congress is now slightly over $2 billion. That is a billion with a B. Number three.
Hey, wait a minute. If they're paid government employees, how could their wealth go up if they're on a fixed salary?
Well, that's why they'll spend 50 times what it pays to get the job.
Gee, are they getting money on the side somehow?
Yeah, let's continue.
Okay.
Number three, this happened during a time when the net worth of most American households was declining rapidly. According to the Federal Reserve, the collective net worth of all Americans decreased by 23% during the same period. So there's one up more than...
Let me add this to it, too. All you hear about from Republicans in Congress is government Obamacare, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, then... here's what I propose. I propose that every citizen in the United States should have the identical health care as the Congress gets.
Oh, that's right. They're exempt from all their own laws and get their own health care.
Yeah, and what is it? It's government-run health care. So when you hear Michelle Bachmann screaming about Obamacare, remember, she has government-run health care that serves her family just fine.
That's right. Ron Paul has refused it, by the way.
Well, okay, Ron's an honorable man.
Exactly. No, I was just...
But the point is, there's your fine example, that the Congress gets benefits you don't get. They get health care. You think they're worried at all that half of this country can't even go to the doctor because they have no health care? What do they care for? They have theirs. And theirs is government run. So when you hear all these Republicans sit and condone or berate government run health care when they have it, that's the height of hypocrisy.
You're right. Here's a couple more. I won't read them all. Number four, the average net worth of a member of Congress is now approximately $3.8 million. Number five, the net worth of House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi increased 62% from 2009 to 2010. Boy, talk about cashing in. The top Republican in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, saw his net worth grow by 29% from 2009 to 2010. He is now approximately worth $9.8 million. Number seven, more than 50% of the members of U.S. Congress are millionaires. It just goes on, but enough of that, Governor.
And, that doesn't necessarily make them bad.
No.
I mean, that's what America's about. Let me be clear on that, But the point is, if it's a level playing field.
Yes.
And if they're acquiring their money in an honest manner, and they're not selling their souls to rock and roll, which is what these people... the first thing that I would do if I became president of the United States, you know what I would attempt to do?
Tell me.
I would take away retirement. Because when you do public service, you should not get a retirement for it. That's what you ought to look into too, Alex. Look into the retirement of these congressmen and the huge parachutes they get for their time in office.
There are some small town people in small town government getting $800,000 a year in California. Gov, there's so much to cover and we're running out of time. I want to go back to during the break. You were
Do you think that would be a good idea as president? Take away all retirement. You're supposed to be doing public service. When you do public service, there shouldn't be a retirement plan.
Well, I know it's certainly turned the government into a mafia, but Gov, going back to during the break, you were really on fire talking about what the TSA is, where this country's going, the media lying about what you said. Throw down the gauntlet. I mean, you've got the floor.
You know, again, the TSA to me, you know, the workers out there. I mean, these are $10 an hour workers. These are people that are not highly trained. They're not highly trained at all to do what they do, and it's a complete abuse. People that work at the airports, they don't have to go through this screening. It's only the passengers that do. And I would love to see people boycott the airlines. I would encourage people, if you get the chance, don't fly. Don't participate in this martial law that's going on at our airports. Because if you want to know what martial law is, go to an airport. Go to an airport. All you're going to see are guards, armed guards, walking everywhere, and you being frisked and patted down and treated like a prison asylum. And that's what our airports... I live in Mexico half the year, and I have a lot of friends down there that come from Europe. They avoid the United States like the plague. They avoid it because it's like going into East Berlin. They tell me that. Is that what our country should stand for? We, the bastion of freedom, and we're supposed to stand for this lockdown? You know, all over the pretense that they're keeping us safe? Keeping us safe from who? I would say we need to be kept safe from them.
Well said. That's what I told the TSA guy. I'm like, how do I know you're not a terrorist? You guys get caught stealing and doing all this stuff constantly.
You know, I'm not going to get into individual things the TSA does. The TSA is there because our elected officials and government, George Bush and the Patriot Act, put them there.
You're right.
And the TSA and Homeland Security. Homeland Security is a federal agency that has the power of the Gestapo. I mean, when I went out to do Plum Island, none of the fishermen would take me on a legal ride in their boat because they were afraid Homeland Security would pull their license and they would lose their livelihood. That's what our government's supposed to be, oppressive like that? Our government is supposed to rule us with fear? I don't think that's what the United States of America should stand for at all. And that's what our government, in my opinion, has turned into today.
Well, you're right. I mean, the whole world looks at us in horror and thinks of us as a police state.
Well, Alex, why do we need bases all throughout the world? What have we done to the rest of the world where we have the need to protect ourselves to such extreme? Obviously, we're not a very good neighbor. Because if you got to barricade your house and put up armament and electric fencing and guard dogs and everything else in the world, obviously you don't trust your neighbors at all, or you don't have a good relationship with the people around you. And that's what it seems like the United States of America has turned into today. We were looked at one time as the bastion of freedom. I don't know how anybody could look when we want to put walls up at our borders. We got stopped. It's like driving around Nazi Germany now. They got stops all over the country when you drive places. And the people of this country, many of them sit back and say, oh, that's wonderful.
Well,
be safe.
Well, you're right on that. The vast majority are upset about it, but they don't have any respect for themselves to file a lawsuit or boycott or speak up like you've done. And they need to understand. Remember Obama at his last State of the Union said, we'll put up trains nationwide, and don't worry, you won't get groped like the airport, and people laughed. And they were already doing it at train stations. He knew he was lying. I mean, this is insane. And then what's crazy is I go fishing a few times a year in Port Aransas and other areas. I've been doing it my whole life. And now, when Coast Guard or Homeland Security now out there drives within 500 yards, people stop the boats and bow their heads, basically groveling. And I said, why are you doing that? And they said, if you look at them and if you don't stop your boat, they jump on board and scream and yell at you. And I said, really? And they said, oh, yeah, this isn't America anymore. And we're talking hundreds of miles from the border. And they literally... This morning I was driving into work and I saw a bunch of police out doing some highway work, and they were like bugging their eyes out, strutting around looking crazy.